welcome to my first Q&A session. I've made myself a nice cup of South African rooibos tea, and Nadej baked me a cake, and soon she will show us how to bake that cake. But I want to thank you for all the questions, and when I went through the questions, two very distinct topics surfaced. The first one, before I moved to France, and the second one, of course, after the move. So basically, my background, my past in South Africa, and the second batch of questions more concerned with my life after 5 years in France. And like Julie Andrews said, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. So, question number 1. When did your ancestors arrive in South Africa? Were your ancestors Dutch or English? Now, my great-great-great-grandparents moved to South Africa many years ago. I'm not quite sure when, but on my father's side from Germany and on my mother's side from Holland. And then the next question deals with where were you born? I was born in Cape Town, South Africa. Next question, are you an only child and do you have any family in South Africa? Well, I'm the youngest of 3 sons. I still have one brother left, but I arrived 13 years after my middle brother. So I hardly knew them as a child because they already moved out of the house. So basically I grew up as an only child, one could say. I still have lots of family back in South Africa. Like I said, my eldest brother, who's 15 years older than me, and also quite a few nephews and nieces, and of course cousins. Quite a few of them are spread all over the world. United Arab Emirates, in the UK, there are some in Australia. So we're kind of all over the world. Then, as a child, what did you want to be when you grow up? Now, since I can remember, I've been drawing. All kinds of, I love drawing figures, especially faces. And I also drew a lot of movies. After my parents had taken me to see The Sound of Music, The Poseidon Adventure, I can remember, I turned it into a storybook. So I love drawing, but my first choice was to become a pilot. I was absolutely besotted with planes, and I still am. They took me to every air show, and I loved flying. And as a child, I had an uncle in Namibia, and I often went to visit him and his wife and my cousin. And I got there with a tiny Piper aeroplane. Absolutely wonderful. But then at school I discovered mathematics. And I thought, no, I would rather remain a passenger. So I still adore flying, but I think being a pilot was out at a very early age. And my next option then was to become a medical doctor. But unknown to me at that stage, it was already the artist in me coming to the fore. Very early in my life, I asked my parents for a little blackboard and chalk. So education also surfaced quite early in my life. And I think those two things kind of defined later on in my school career what I wanted to become. Something to do with art and something to do with education. When I started high school, I was forced to take woodwork, but instead of making little useless objects, I decided to make a string puppet. I had just discovered the music of Shirley Bassey, and so I painted a full symphony orchestra as a backdrop and then made a Bassey string puppet to perform for my family and my friends. Right, the next question is quite a loaded question, and I grouped quite a few questions together because they all boil down to the same thing. Can you tell us a little about your life in South Africa? Tell us about your past, both as an artist, but also perhaps more generally about your life before moving to France. Now, by the time I started my last year of school, I knew I wanted to go and study fine arts. But I did a BA Fine Arts degree with an education diploma. But something else happened in my last year of school. My mother decided that I was far too much of an introvert and too shy, and she sent me off to the Academy of Speech and Drama. And I think that was the second passion that started in my life, in my last year of school. And throughout my life, those two passions, art and drama, played a huge role in my life. And they were always there. Sometimes the one made way for the other, and more than often both of them featured in my life. And I think having started the YouTube channel, they kind of came together again after a long while, because making these videos for you, I tried to do it from an artistic point of view, and I also get the opportunity to sometimes add a little drama to it. Going to the Academy of Speech and Drama opened up a whole new world to me. I joined the school's drama club and was entered for Eisteddfods, language festivals, etc. And like I said, from then on, my whole life revolved around those two passions, art and drama. So after school, I went to study BA Fine Arts with a teaching diploma, but at the same time, after hours, I studied for a drama diploma and even got small parts in the university's drama productions because they had too few male students, and I got involved in their drama department as well. And then after my fine arts degree and my drama diploma, I did an honors degree in Afrikaans and Dutch literature, and it was in June that year that my parents sent me overseas for the first time. And that was in 1981. It was my first meeting with Europe. It was a 3-week tour, and we went to many places, like 2 or 3 days per city, and eventually we ended up in Paris. And that was the first time I discovered France. Well, basically Paris, and I loved it. At the same time, I also discovered musicals in London, and then of course the extravaganzas at the Moulin Rouge in Paris. But then for the next 2 years, my life was put on hold. I had to go and do my military service for 2 years, and everything came to a halt. So after 6 months of basic training, I really got bored and I decided, okay, let me do the officers course because I love challenges. And I did the officers course for another 6 months, and at the end of my first year I became a 2-pip lieutenant, and they sent me off to the headquarters, the army headquarters in Pretoria, and that is where I became second in command of pensions. Not a very exciting job, but it taught me a lot. And in retrospect, I must say that the whole experience during those 2 years taught me a lot about myself, my physical abilities, my mental abilities especially, also the opportunity to explore new things, and I also discovered that I could switch off. If there was something that really bugged me, I could totally switch off and forget about it and survive in that way. Now, during my second year in the army, I was allowed to apply for teaching posts already, and then what happened was, if I did get a post, the government would pay for a substitute while I finished my military training. And I applied all over in Cape Town, did not get one post, and eventually I found my first teaching post. I went for an interview and got the post at Hyde Park High School in Johannesburg, and that is where my teaching career started. So soon after I'd started at Hyde Park High School, I taught Afrikaans second language to English-speaking students at that stage, and they only gave me one art class to teach, the worst class in the school. But I thought, well, let me start something new, and I started the drama club, and I started producing their annual major productions, and that was very exciting because it was a time when I met incredible people in my life, because some of the learners had very famous stage parents and they all came in to help. Then something else happened in my life. Sorry, I need to do this. So good. The musical Jesus Christ Superstar was banned for many, many years in South Africa. And then all of a sudden, I read that they had auditions for the first production in South Africa after it was unbanned. And although I had no vocal training, I loved singing. And I really desperately wanted to sing. So I thought, okay, let me go and try and audition for even a chorus part. That would be fine. Because you see, singing also has a long history in my life. When I was at primary school, I wanted to join the school choir, but the music teacher threw me out because she said, you sing off key, so off you go. And I decided, I was still very, very small, and I decided, okay, one day I will sing and people will pay to hear me sing. So I was very determined. Every day after school, I would get home and put on a long playing record of Shirley Bassey, and I started singing with her. So indirectly, Dame Bassey was actually responsible for my vocal training, because I taught my ear to be able to sing in key. And by the time I went for this audition in Johannesburg, I had a lot of basic training, and I got the part of Caiaphas, the evil one. Because of my baritone voice, I always got the evil parts. Even later on in Johannesburg, when I did voice dubbing for TV and radio work, I was always cast as the evil one. So once again, I had to play the evil part of Caiaphas, but it was a wonderful experience. We played for 6 weeks and 8 shows a week, and that's while I was teaching. So the only day of rest was on a Sunday. But it really was a great experience, despite the fact that we had lots of protests outside the theatre at one stage. We also had bomb threats, and sometimes you had to run backstage to go and get changed or whatever, through police dogs and policemen searching for bombs. And yeah, it was quite an experience, but it taught me so much, and it gave me confidence because I grew in the part over 6 weeks. And eventually I thought, I can do this, and people did pay to hear me sing, so that was great. Now, the year before Jesus Christ Superstar, I also was commissioned, and I think that was the first time I really painted professionally. I was commissioned to do a portrait of the Afrikaans singer Nathaniel, and it was featured in a magazine, an Afrikaans glossy magazine, The Cut, and that gave me a lot of exposure. Now, in 1991, I moved from Hyde Park High School to go and teach at the Technical College, Joubert Park in Johannesburg. And I had the opportunity to teach history of art and design and drawing. So you can see that art and drama really featured throughout my life. After 1 year of teaching at the Technical College, I found that teaching takes away all your creativity. You get home after work and you're absolutely drained. There's nothing left, no creativity, because you pour everything into the students. And my art became very secondary at that stage. And I thought, no, I need to make a change. So what happened was I moved to a smaller city in South Africa called Bloemfontein, flower fountain, directly translated. And I auditioned there for the Arts Council, and I got a part there in a musical. That was the first production I did for them, and it was a world premiere, Moses the Freedom Man. Very similar to Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, but really a great show. And it also taught me so much, because apart from acting, you also had to dance and sing. And I was not a trained dancer, so that was new to me, and I had to learn 6 different dance forms. And that was quite an experience for somebody who's got 2 left feet. I even did a traditional gumboot dance on top of a jungle gym. So after the musical Moses, the Freedom Man, I got other parts in Shakespeare's Macbeth. I also got parts in The Sound of Music, and cabaret. In that I also played the chimpanzee. And then the cherry on top was I played Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror.
Don't get strung out by the way I love. Don't judge a book by its cover. I'm not much of a man by the light of the day, but I don't want hell of a lover. I'm just a sweet transvestite, transsexual,
And on that note, I left Bloemfontein because at that stage my father became very ill and I decided to move back to Cape Town. Also, while I was in Bloemfontein, I had a very successful exhibition in Johannesburg, sold out, and one of the paintings was a portrait of Afrikaans singer, very popular, Amanda Strydom, and she actually bought it herself, and until today she's still using it in one of her one-woman shows, State of the Heart. So when I arrived there, I was unemployed, and I had to go and work as a waiter in one of the restaurants at the theatre complex. And I'll never forget one evening I just arrived there to do my shift, and one of the chefs said to me, there's an art post at one of the black township schools. Now there were 3 township schools in Cape Town that offered art, and this was at one of them, Gugulethu Comprehensive School. So the next day I phoned them. They asked me to come through for an interview. And you must remember this was 1994, the year of the big elections, the last of the apartheid era. And so things were not that kosher in the townships. But I went for the interview, and I stepped out of the office into the classroom and started teaching there. For 4 years, I had the most incredible teaching experience. And just before the elections, I can remember some organizations moved into the townships and came to our school and said to all the white teachers, we were 5 at that stage, you have to be out by tomorrow. So the principal gathered all the students and he asked them, do you want them out? Should they not come back the following day? And the students said, no, they must come back. So the next morning when I parked my car, got out, and there was one of my students, my senior students, and he lifted his jacket and he had a gun. And he said to me, I'll protect you. Wherever you go today, I'll protect you. And eventually when the organization came to chase us out, the students actually refused. They locked the gates. They couldn't get in onto the school grounds. So those were turbulent times, but very exciting. And to have been able to teach there was incredible. After about 2 years of teaching there, I organized a big showcase exhibition at the theatre complex where I used to work in a restaurant, and I drew all 3 township schools offering art together, and we had a major exhibition with lots of publicity. Now during that time I also traveled a lot to my niece in Dubai, and I once was commissioned to do the Princess of Dubai, so I did portraits of them. But still the other passion in my life wouldn't leave me alone. And soon I was back on stage. And that is where I met the wonderful pianist Lorraine Rothenberg. And I also met up again with my friend from university. She did a drama degree, Annette, and she directed our first one-man show, Bed and Breakfast. And whenever we had time, we created new one-man shows and even toured the country. We went to all the cabaret venues during school holidays to perform there.
Maybe this time I'll win, 'cause everybody loves a winner, so nobody loves me. Mr. Peaceful, Mr. Happy, that's what I long to be. All the odds are they're in my favor. Something's bound to begin. It's gotta happen sometime. Maybe this time. Maybe this time I'll win. Now, one of those things that singers are always looking for is a new love song. Well, I think I found an interesting one. Not as interesting as my show. I guess you could call it a foreign language love song. Because it's about two people speaking different languages, trying to communicate. You see, my lover makes no sound. Her language is her hands. I watch her fingers dance and try to understand. I try to understand her elegant ballet. In my heart I can hear the words she longs to say.
Now, 4 years later, I became a subject advisor. So I left Gugulethu Comprehensive School and I went to a regional office where I was supposed to train the teachers, the art teachers, in the new curriculum and also provide support to them. And that I did for 10 years. And then after 10 years, I became senior curriculum planner for visual arts and design. And I even wrote the curriculum for design, which was a new high school subject at that stage. And I co-wrote textbooks for high school. While I was in that position, I got involved in many collaborations with, amongst others, Woolworths and quite a few others. And still on the side, the performances continued. So in 1999, I actually hired a few very professional musicians. I could only afford them for one day. So we recorded a CD in one day, 17 songs in one go. And most of those songs, those musicians have never even heard of. And they were just out of this world. They immediately picked up and we recorded the CD. So that was another highlight and something on my bucket list that I could tick off. Now that leads me to the next question. Where is your heart when it comes to art, such as painting, writing, music, filming, etc.? Being creative, I wonder, is there something you can't do but you would like to do? As you can see from my past, I still can't really choose. I love them all. But there's one thing that I am very sorry I did not do, and that is to learn how to play the piano. That's really something that I wanted to do, but never had the opportunity. I took lessons early on, I think I was still at school, how to read music, so I can read music, but I never learned to play the piano. So maybe that's something I'll do in the future. Okay, the next question. When did you start painting professionally? Do you ever sell your art? Now, the commissioned portrait in 1989 of the singer Nathaniel, that was my first professional painting I did. And since then, I haven't really sold art until I got to France. And then I had quite a few exhibitions here, very successful. And it was the first time I could really focus on my art. And in 2020, that was the last of my exhibitions in France, and it was almost sold out. And in 2018, I just have to add that I also made my singing debut in France at a music festival. So you can see they both run in my life constantly. Right, now we get to the second part. What made you leave South Africa, and what brought you to France, and what was the decision to relocate to France? You know, it's quite a difficult question because I don't quite know why I left South Africa. The only reason in retrospect is that I started thinking, one day when I'm retired and I grow old, do I really want to live behind burglar bars, locked gates, security alarms, armed response? No, I wanted security, and at the moment that is what I have in France. You know, I often forget to lock my front door. When I go out, walk down to the village or whatever, I leave my windows open. There are no burglar bars, and that I find amazing. But I also bumped into my ex-painting lecturer at the National Arts Festival in Oudtshoorn in 2014. And we started talking, and he has been living with his partner in France for many, many years. I think at that stage, probably 13 plus years in France. And he said to me, just have a look at the property prices. They're quite unbelievable. So I started looking on the internet, and 4 months later, I bought this house on the internet. And that's how it came about. I thought it was going to be a holiday home. So for the first 2 years, I came here during holidays with my friend Annette and her partner, and we started renovating. And then after 2 years, I decided I actually want to stay here all the time. And I was working in very, very stressful circumstances at that stage, where you had no time to switch off. I had to work 24/7. Teachers would ask me for advice up till 11 o'clock at night. They would phone me. And it just got too much for me, and I decided, because of my health, I need to retire early. So I took early retirement and moved to France. Okay, then the next question I found very interesting. What was your French language level prior to moving to France? Were you fluent? If not, how did you improve? Was it organic, or did you have lessons? Now let me tell you, my French, when I came here in 2014 for the first time, was non-existent. The only French I knew was probably the lyrics of the song Non, je ne regrette rien, the Piaf song, and I never knew actually what I sang at that stage because I didn't understand. I just learned it phonetically. And when I bought the house, I decided, also after my first visit and my first experiences with the neighbors who could not speak a word of English, I decided I need to learn the language if I want to move here. So I started lessons on the internet. It's free. And I started with the basics. But I think the biggest learning curve was when I moved here in 2016 and had to start communicating in French all the time. When you go shopping, when you need to solve administrative matters, apply for the visas, etc., it has to be in French. And a funny thing also happened was that the South African driver's license is valid for 1 year only in France. And there were so many things happening in my life, and I submitted my license to exchange it for a French driver's license 1 month too late. And that was a bad experience because then I had to redo my driver's license all in French, including the theory test. Well, after 2 months, I was ready, and the first one, I made 2 appointments, one after the other. The first one, I failed by 1 point. You have to have 35 out of 40. I got 34, and the second time I got 38 out of 40. So I passed that, and the practical driving test was quite easy. So I passed that as well. So now I'm actually a learner driver in France. I also have to add that every morning with my first coffee, without skipping one day, I do my daily French lessons for about half an hour. So it's integration with the community where I have to speak French, but also formal lessons on the internet. Right, let's go to the next question. What made you decide on France for your new home? Was France your first choice to settle in? How old were you when you first wanted to live in France, if that was your first choice? At what point in your life did you realize that you could live in France? What made you choose the Haute-Vienne, this department, and did you know anyone there beforehand? Now, why did I choose France? I have no idea. I chose the house, yes, because it had the right look, and I bought it. So I landed up here by accident. Didn't know the region at all. Before, I've only been to Paris, obviously, Lyon, Nice, Carcassonne, and those were the only places that I knew in France. So I ended up here in Haute-Vienne region, and I'm extremely happy here. I was 57 when I decided to buy here, and I did not know a single soul when I came here, but that quickly changed. And thanks to you, I now have a lot of friends all over the world. So that's great. Right, the next question. How well have you adjusted to life in France, and do you have any regrets leaving your former homeland? What are some of the biggest cultural differences between South Africa and France? Well, let me tell you, I have no regrets leaving my homeland. I have security here. The people are warm and friendly. Wherever you go, you will never pass a person, whether you know the person or not, in the street without saying bonjour. And when you go into, for example, the boulangerie, the bakery, you will greet everybody there. And when you leave, you say goodbye to them and you wish them a nice day, a bonne journée. So that's incredible. I don't think it is a general thing in the cities. I did not really experience that, especially not in Paris, but in rural France, that is the norm. And cultural differences, there are quite a few. And I think one of the most important things to me is that people in France, they still value the arts a lot. They also value skilled persons and artisans, not only intellectually skilled people. And another thing that is very obvious to me is that the younger generation, teenagers, are not separate from the older generation. They do everything together. And I think that's wonderful. And then the other thing is that nobody can contact you or may contact you after hours. When you take your break during lunchtime, because that is the big meal of the day, you will see all over lunchtime that things come to a standstill. Businesses close, everybody's having lunch, and maybe that's the way it should be. So people are not allowed to contact you after hours, and in South Africa that was totally different. I mean, there you were on duty 24/7. Next question. Since you have had a few years to get used to living in France, do you feel that it has met your expectations, and if not, what would make it better? Let me tell you, I think I didn't come here with a lot of expectations, really, apart from security, which I do have. But I'm one of those people, wherever you put me, I'll be happy. And I'm extremely happy here. But also services are excellent, public services, and uninterrupted, unlike in South Africa. So overall, yes. With restrictions lifting, do you have any plans to travel back to South Africa to visit family and friends? And the person said in brackets, and take us with you. Or will they come and visit you? I have no plans to travel back to South Africa. In 4 or 5 years' time, I have to renew my passport, which I will do through the embassy in Paris. But hopefully soon friends will be able to come and visit me again, because although I don't miss my home country, I do miss my friends. So hopefully they'll come back soon. What prompted you to start a YouTube channel? Well, initially the idea was to communicate my experiences in France with my friends and family in South Africa. That's why I started the channel. And then it kind of got around, and like I've said, now I've got friends all over the world. So that's great, thank you. Do you have a favorite region of France? And if you do, what makes it your favorite? What are your favorite places in France that you have visited so far? And tell us the top 5 must-see places there are and what makes them special. I have not been to all the regions in France, so I cannot really tell you. Obviously, I love this region, and the more I explore and discover here, the more I love it. But if you look at the 5 top places, must-see places, I will show you. Nantes, because of a rich art culture. They are so into their arts. Every second shop is an art gallery. Bloemfontein, because of the beauty of the place. You can remember that, the Venice of Périgord. Uzès, because of its rich history. Biarritz, because of its natural beauty, sophistication, and of course the sea. Lyon, because of the Paris in the small feel that the city has. It's like a miniature Paris, and much more manageable. But there are so many places, and it's really difficult to choose. I mean, there's Sarlat de Canada, Paris of course, love Paris, but in very small doses. I cannot stay there for too long. It's too busy for me now. I'm not used to the city life anymore. And then there's Brive de Gaillard. Really stunning places all over. Too many to mention. Okay, name your top 5 favorite restaurants and their best dishes. Okay. Oh, that makes me hungry. Let me show you. There is Hôtel de France in Rochechouart, and I would recommend the Magret de Canard, which is the duck breast with applesauce. One of my favorites, Roulet de Gore. We've been there, and there you can eat whatever is on the menu. It's always good. Then there is Chef Francis in Brive de Gaillard, and there I would recommend the French veal with raspberry vinegar sauce. Then there is the incredible La Table de M in Uzès, and one of my favorites there is the foie gras with stewed mango. And then of course, I think one of my highlights in France was the Alain Ducasse au Plaza Athénée in Paris. In the hotel, you go to the Michelin star chef Alain Ducasse, and you have the full champagne breakfast. Absolutely divine. Right, what is the cost of everyday items like milk, bread, butter, cheeses, etc.? And do you find maize, millimil in Afrikaans in France? Yes, you do. In fact, France is one of the big producers of maize, and they export to the other EU countries. And I'll show you a table now of the prices of basic things. based on the current exchange rate. Obviously, I could not fit in all the currencies, but I tried to highlight the main currencies. Right, what's your favorite thing to look for at a brocante? Chandeliers and candelabra, but I'm running out of space, so these days I'm looking for linen, and that is what I'm trying to find: serviettes, bed linen, etc. Right. What time period would you have liked to live in? I'm quite happy in the present, I must tell you, because every period had its problems. So now we're stuck with COVID, but previously there were other things, you know. But maybe for the clothing, I would have loved to have lived in Versailles with Louis XIV, the Sun King. But with my luck, I probably would have been a servant and not one of the bourgeoisie. So I don't think that would have been a good idea. So I'll stay in the present. I'm quite happy here. If you could spend an evening with any person who has ever lived, who would that be? I would say I would love an evening with the surrealist painter Salvador Dali, Spanish painter. And I would have loved to have been at one of his dinner parties. And at the same time, around the table, I would like to have met Roald Dahl, the surrealist writer. So those two would have been a great evening. If you could spend an evening with any fictional character, who would that be? That's a difficult one. I think it would have been Sally Bowles from I Am a Camera, the play, which was later on adapted for the movies as Cabaret, and the part of Sally Bowles was played by Liza Minnelli. So I think that's the character that I would have liked to have met. Yes, Sally Bowles. Just one evening. That would have been a crazy evening. And before I forget, together with Salvador Dali and Roald Dahl, I would have loved to have met Josephine Baker. So the more I do research about her, and soon I'll probably take you to her castle that she owned in France, Chateau de Mélandre, and we'll have a look there. Right. If you were abducted by aliens and you were told to choose 5 items, one must be a book, what would you choose before you left Earth forever? Oh, okay. I think I would choose some South African humor, Nathaniel's book called Zip. Hilarious. So to make me laugh, I would take that. Other items would be dental floss and all my art materials, and of course my Euro vaccination pass. Okay. And of course my reading glasses. When the time comes, would you go grey? Oh yes, I'm already halfway there, so soon I might turn fully grey, especially after this episode. And the last question I received I found quite amusing. Which of the British vlog mafia channels are you subscribed to? None. I am not subscribed to any of the channels. I used to be. I unsubscribed, and the sole reason for that is that I do not want to be influenced by other channels. I have my own vision for this channel, and I want to stick to that. The only channel that I am subscribed to is the Positano Diaries, because I find Nikki very professional, very down to earth, everyday life, the same thing that I'm trying to create in my videos. What is normal life without champagne dinner parties every night, etc., etc. So I really like to watch her videos. They're informative, educational in a way, beautifully filmed, really outstanding. So that's the only one I'm subscribed to. But I'm not against any of the channels. I mean, they make up the world and they're all successful, and I wish them the best of luck. So I'm going to have the last of my tea, and I'm going to say bon nuit, have a good night, and